Good morning. I'm going to analyse a very famous game from 1956 played by Bobby Fischer, who was then 13 and a half years old and playing in his first US Championship. And he came up against the International Master Robert Byrne and shocked him and the whole world with this fantastic performance. Beautiful combination. And let's just see what happens. So knight f3. Oh, I'm going to get rid of the analysis. Knight f6. The reti opening, which often transposes into another opening. And here it transposes into some sort of English defence, Anglo-Indian. Indian because the knight is out on f6 before any pawns are in the middle, and Anglo because the c4 is the English opening, so it's the Anglo-Indian knight variation. And now it's back to the reti opening, the kingside fianchetto variation. And so it's the Anglo-Indian queen's knight variation. So what name this opening has changes as the moves are played, by transposition of course. Back to the king's fianchetto variation, but these are all just ordinary developing moves that you would expect from any decent player. Okay, and now we're in a king's Indian defence, normal variation, and Fischer loved to play the king's Indian defence. He also liked to play the king's Indian formation attack as white. So he castles, so very normal, and white takes out his bishop and looks like he's nearly finished with development. Of course, he has to move a pawn to get out the light squared bishop, get out the light squared bishop, castle, and move his queen. Fischer needs to move his knight, move a pawn to get out his dark squared bishop, and move his queen, and then he's finished. So yeah. So he competes for some space in the centre, and instead of taking, he plays the queen to attack also the pawn and to, maybe initiate some more swaps on the queen side, the king side. Sorry. His idea being that if he takes with the pawn, takes with the knight, that he might play pawn to e4 first and get himself a bigger centre by doing so. But he would rather have a bit more support before doing that. So this is a version of the Grunfeld defence. It's called the Hungarian attack. It's a good, if your opponent plays the Grunfeld, the Hungarian attack with queen b3, it's a good way to meet the Grunfeld defence. So Fischer takes, because he knows that he's going to get overwhelmed in the centre otherwise. And Byrne takes back with the queen, c6. It might look like a slow move, and it is a slow move, but it is important in queenside openings to move the c-pawn, whether for white or black, before developing the knight. If you develop the knight before moving the c-pawn, then you're going to get yourself tied up in knots. I'm not saying he's not tied up in knots now. This is a bit of a restrictive opening for black, but he very quickly manages to unpack everything. So now he takes a big grip on the centre with e4, defended by the knight. And the knight comes to support the other knight. Might be thinking about playing knight to b6, might be thinking about playing queen to a5. He leaves these developmental possibilities open. The rook comes to defend the pawn. Yeah, I think if we see what happens in the game, I think we might all say that it might have been better to get the bishop out and castle as quickly as possible. But he doesn't do that, so this allows Fischer to attack the queen. queen goes to c5. Now the bishop comes to g4. The bishop comes to g4 now so that he can play knight here to d7 and attack the queen without blocking in his own bishop. So now the bishop pins the knight to the pawn because if he moves the knight, bishop takes pawn, loses him in exchange. But what about this? Doesn't this lose him a knight? Can't he just take with a knight? No, because if he takes with a knight, then Fischer will take on e4, threatening the queen, and get his pawn back. Threatens the queen and the bishop, and there isn't really a good square on this line where he can defend the bishop or white to go to. So, yeah. So he defends the knight with his queen, and Fischer takes. Now you might say that this just helps black to get a strong centre by giving him a b takes c, and in that case it looks very much like Grunfeld defence. It looks like an ordinary Grunfeld variation more now. So he does take the knight, but Fischer can't take the pawn here because that will lose in the exchange. But Fischer does take the pawn. It was his plan to sacrifice the exchange in this position. So he's threatening this pawn, but at the same time this pawn can be taken by the bishop, and he does take the pawn by the bishop and threatens the queen and rook at the same time. He can't save both, so he saves the queen. So now Byrne can take the bishop, and he's an exchange up, but there is some decent compensation for that. And when the bishop takes the queen might come here. There are attacking possibilities for black in this position. But Byrne decides to wait and attack the f7 pawn with development before picking up the exchange. So Fischer takes on c3. Obviously, if he takes the knight, then rook can come here and the bishop is doomed. So that's not going to work. But he attacks the queen. But this allows Fischer one check. Surely one check isn't enough. It looks like he's got, his queen's hanging, his knight's hanging, and he's used up all his checks. Fischer plays bishop to e6, threatening to play bishop takes bishop check. If he takes the knight, then Fischer can take the bishop on c5 and the pawn is pinned to the queen. And so it comes out to evenish material. The bishop is also attacked again by the queen and bishop, and so if he takes the bishop, Fischer takes with the rook, and then he's got a bishop against the knight and got some more pawns. So he can't just play queen takes bishop, and you'll find that every other attempt to deny Fischer his sacrifice will not work. And so he takes the queen. Fischer gets another check, and now he's He's got a bishop for queen. He's a bishop for queen down, but he gets a lovely little windmill here. So king is only, the rook takes away e1, so he's got to go to g1, which of course gives knight e2 check, and he gets a discovered attack by taking the pawn. It's important to take the pawn first because ultimately he wants to have his knight on c3, attacking the rook, but he wants to have it defended by the bishop. So again, black has, he could block with his rook, but then he's going to take the rook, and then he's going to take the bishop, and he's got two bishops and a rook and a couple of pawns for the queen. So he's doing well. So the king has to go back. Fischer uses the windmill again, and now he gets his knight to the desired square on c6 or c3, where it is defended by his bishop, and goes back, and now he takes the bishop, threatening the queen with his rook. A lovely combination, and here Fischer has two bishops for the queen, but when the queen moves, he can probably take the rook on e1, and then he's got two rooks and two bishops for the two rooks and a bishop for the queen. A rook, bishop, and a couple of pawns for the queen, so it might be a bit nearer material equality. But he plays to b4 with the queen, and Fischer immediately attacks the queen with rook to a4, where it's defended by the knight. Fischer gets then the pawn on b6, and he takes the rook. Now he's got a rook, he's got two bishops and a rook and a pawn for the queen. That's easily enough. A rook's 5, two bishops are 6, that's 11, and the pawn makes 12 for the 9-point queen. Huge material advantage and positional advantage for Fischer now. Really, the combination is over, and Byrne could just as easily just resign here. Really, wouldn't be a problem to resign here, but maybe he felt that maybe a young boy might get nervous and mess up. Maybe he was just shocked and played on just out of sheer momentum. But we can be glad that he played on, because it leads to a beautiful finish. But it's just worth admiring how beautiful that combination was, how well it worked. And from sacrificing his queen to on move 17 to taking the rook on d1 on move 25, 8 moves, it's possible he had this whole combination worked out. It's also just as likely that he just seen that, wait a minute, I'm going to get a windmill, this is going to be irresistible, I'm going to gain material out of this. In a good attack, it isn't always necessary to have analysed every single move. It's good if you've analysed every single move, every single variation, but sometimes it can just be too long to do the whole analysis. But sometimes you can just do it on the basis of, wait a minute, I know I'm getting a powerful attack here. I can just afford to give away my queen for that attack. Which was the case here, I don't know, but it all worked out perfectly. So Byrne makes some space for his king, and Fischer takes another pawn. Now he's got two pawns, two bishops, a rook for the queen. Huge material advantage. So he moves his king and attacks the knight. So now he's got three pawns, two bishops, and a rook for his queen. Yeah, okay. If he lets him take the rook, then it'll be a bit more even. But of course he takes the rook. Good. He plays check first instead of taking the rook back right away. He says check first. You know, to which there is only one answer: to bring the bishop back. And now, yeah, you can see how overwhelming a position this is. How much Fischer has for his queen. He's threatening the pawn on g2. Okay, the knight's defending it in a minute, but he might well be able to chase the knight away. Yeah, well, he could just take the knight and move the knight and say check at this point, but he moves the knight to, you know, come, I don't know, maybe to c5 with the knight, maybe to c3, just to make it so that when he moves the knight, he's threatening to take the bishop, and the pawn, which should be defending the bishop, is pinned. So Fischer attacks the loose pawn on b8. Sorry, Byrne attacks loose pawn on b8, and Fischer plays b5. And I just take a minute and look. Every single piece on the board is defended at least once. The rook is defended by the rook is defended by the bishop. The bishop is defended by the pawn. The pawn is defended by the bishop. This pawn is defended by this pawn. The knight is defended by the bishop. The bishop is defended by the king. This pawn is defended by the bishop and the king. This pawn is defended by the pawn, and this pawn is defended by the king. Everything's defended beautifully in this position, and you know, even though he's the only one with a queen on the board, Byrne has nothing to do with that queen. You know, there are no points he can attack, and you know, it's just lovely position for Fischer. So he has no pieces he can move, nothing to do with his queen, so he just moves the pawn, and Fischer takes away a move from the pawn, stop him coming to h5 and making another attack. So the knight threatens the pawn. Fischer plays king to g7, and now he's threatening to play bishop to d6, covered by the bishop, threatening the queen and the knight, and skewering the king behind. So the king tries to run away now. Check, 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 and a lovely mate to finish. A lovely, lovely checkmate. Alright, when you've got all these extra pieces, you are going to get checkmate. But a beautiful finish, which was very appropriate for such a lovely game, and such a fantastic and mature combination from the 13-year-old Bobby Fischer. You know, so it's really his introduction to the chess world at large. I think he was already known in New York chess circles through the Marshall Chess Club in Manhattan, or the Manhattan Chess Club. I can't remember exactly which one he played at. But this game has been analysed again hundreds of times. There's a bunch of good YouTube videos on it. Jozerov, Croatian policeman, fantastic analysis of this game. King's Crusher has a brilliant analysis. Power Play Chess, Daniel King has a great analysis, and Chess Network Jerry has a great analysis. I'm sure there are others out there. I think Agad Matar, who is incidentally the brother-in-law to Jozerov, has an analysis of it. Hesitate to call it a great analysis, but you know, it's bound to be good. I'm not really a watcher of Agad Matar's channel. Yeah, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and comment. Yeah, thanks. Bye.